and welcome to another edition of Me, My CTO and I, the podcast that takes a wry smile and a deep dive into the world of technology leadership. I'm Andrew Weaver, CEO at CTO Academy, and I'm joined as ever by my wonderful co-host Sanjay, who is a little in mourning because of his beloved Leicester City, who, Sanjay, I think, are on the verge of relegation. Am I right or wrong?
I can't believe you've dropped that in. I've got to have to get my own back now. Yes, very, very disappointed earlier this week. I decided not to watch the end of the game, and my eldest son was very upset. So, well, yeah, not a good week. Those not familiar with football and or English football, Leicester City, who won the Premier League only a few years ago, remarkably, are on the verge of going down. But Sanjay, apart from Leicester City, what's been going on in your world in the last month or so? Again, kind of personal activity. So I popped my knee last week while training jiu-jitsu. I mean, I did win the fight, so that's all that matters. But the interesting thing was I saw that Mark Zuckerberg has been training jiu-jitsu for a handful of months, and he actually won some tournaments, and kind of got me thinking, really, like, why is Mark Zuckerberg training jiu-jitsu? And it kind of made me think, why do I do it? And you know, the real reason, I mean, I do love it, and I love the sport, and I like the exercise, but I was having a conversation with someone a couple of weeks ago, and what I discovered was things like jiu-jitsu and yoga give me my time, my space, and my kind of creates like a mental barrier for the rest of the world. And I found that to kind of really help in my day job. Now, popping my knee, not so much fun, but it was just a really interesting reflection when I saw Mark Zuckerberg winning some medals and my knee not looking very healthy. But yeah, there you go.
You and the Zuck have got something in common.
I mean, he's just copying me. He's just jealous of me, right? That's what it is. How about yourself, Andrew? How have you been?
Well, obviously, I've got my own middle-age injuries, but I'm not going to bore the audience with those. But I've had a wonderful week, a month rather, since we last met, including a trip to Sao Paulo, which was very exciting. We've got a growing community of tech leaders down in Sao Paulo, which is an amazing city. It's huge, it's fascinating, and very, very vibrant. But I don't want to go into too much detail because I managed to twist the arm of Juliana down there to do our 80-second slot on Sao Paulo at the end of this. So we'll be coming to that. But what we did also do, actually, Sanjay, and I'm going to give you a breakdown on this. We did a little survey of our CTOs, of our tech leaders around the world, and we asked them what are the things that you shouldn't say to your CEO?
Nice.
Would you like a rundown of the top five?
I'm intrigued, yes.
Okay. Well, producer James is going to put some background music as we count down here. But here we go. These are the things that the CTO shouldn't try and avoid saying to their CEO. Coming in at number 5, have you tried turning it off and on?
No.
I chuckle because that's probably the question that Jason asked me most. Number four, KPIs. Remind me again. That was quite a nice one. Number 3 was very simple. Why? Things the CTO shouldn't probably ask the CEO. The final 2, coming in at number 2. Hold off. I'll take over this investor presentation.
That's going to win you some brownie points, right?
It's a good one. And then number 1, the number 1 thing you shouldn't say as a CTO or a tech leader to your CEO, do you think you will still want this next week?
The scary thing is I think I've used quite a few of them, but yeah, never mind.
So anyway, that was a fun survey. So yes, if you have had, if you thought about saying those to yourself, to your CEO, then that you might feel some sympathy with the people that submitted those entries. Just before we go to our wonderful quiz, the world's first and I think most popular tech leaders quiz, the fireside chat that's coming up shortly, Sanjay. Give us a bit of a quick intro to that.
Yeah. So really interesting guest, person called Matt. We're going to be delving into selling and the art of persuasion, which not many technical leaders want to do, but have to do. So I think it's a really interesting subject. Matt's got lots of background and knowledge on this, so I'm really excited to dig into it.
Awesome. Okay, that's coming up shortly. But of course, before that, dear listener, we have...
You really, really need to get out more.
So yes, dear listener, as I said before that little intro, we have our wonderful quiz returning. The quiz called You Really, Really Need to Get Out More, where CTO Academy invites 2 tech leaders from around the world to clash head-to-head for $50 to get out more to their local nominated restaurant. Chuck Hardy down in Devon in the UK won the last episode, and he apparently is going to Rockfish, although he tells me he's been far too busy to get there since we recorded. So Rockfish has yet to see Chuck and his family arrive. But today, very, very pleased to welcome Paul and Sandeep. Welcome both.
Hi guys, how you doing? Good to be here.
Hey Sandeep,
Hello.
This is an Anglo-American clash. This is a clash between the UK and the US, which always adds a little bit of spice to the
Nice.
to the event. Paul, let me bring you in first. Up in Manchester, we've actually met. It's one of the few people I've met within the CTO Academy community, being such a global organisation as we are. But Paul, great to see you, and thank you for joining us. Just a little bit of background about you and what your company is up to, and maybe the audience are always really interested to find out where you are in terms of your growth and challenges that you're facing.
Yeah, thanks Sanjay. Thanks for having me. It's good to be on it. It's my first podcast, so popping the cherry there. So I'm CTO of Raildiary. We're a business based in Manchester in the UK. We're a SaaS business focused on accelerating sustainable construction. Raildiary is born out of pure frustration. Back in 2017, I ran a digital agency, and we built websites, apps, you name it, we built it. One of our clients was Raildiary. It was the founder, Will, who came to us to share his experience and learnings about construction projects that had gone wrong, and essentially led to lengthy but successful claims, but ultimately broken future relationships for future contracts. So we devised a tool, we built a tool for them, built a prototype, and out of that prototype came a round of funding and then a sale of my agency, and I then found myself as CTO. Now, originally we had the challenges of changing the thinking of the team. The team came across with us. We had to go from working on multiple projects to a single SaaS product. And we had lots of engineering processes already built within the business, but we almost had to unlearn some of those and pivot to change the products quickly and adapt for new customers as we were approached by them. The main challenges we have now are how we continuously position ourselves as a product. One position we don't want to take is a claims management tool. We're not about that. We're more about preventing claims from happening. So, being proactive on decisions for projects. Another challenge we have is the delivery of that product on site as well. So we're competing against paper, WhatsApp in some cases, and at the other end of the spectrum, we're competing against engineering assurance tools. So they're people who are already digitally focused and using tools for project management. Now the data we collect is the narrative about what happens on site. So we do that in a structured way. And we don't want to be perceived as Big Brother, so we put an enormous amount of effort into supporting the delivery of our product on site directly to that end user. So it's almost like a concierge approach, and we've done that successfully. We've changed some habits. We've created. We've learned a lot. We've adapted the product in new ways and focused on that user experience on site. So collect a structured data set for now we can start to use that data for more commercial analysis. So the next steps for us are, how do we take that product to other linear construction? That's highways, that's energy and utilities, even international clients. We're still UK focused, very heavily on rail. We've also touched on health and safety information. How do we create a safe workplace? How do we manage fatigue of people on site and make sure that their well-being in the workplace is maintained? My biggest challenge at the moment is providing the tools to the team themselves to make decisions autonomously. As we change the products, we get new ideas from CEOs, from stakeholders. They stream in this way and that. The team needs the ability to be able to make those decisions and confidently say yes or no, or we're going to make that, take this approach and provide a reason behind that. So I'm working on the overall technology strategy and how that aligns with our business in the long term as we move to new sectors.
I've got a question, Paul. I'm gonna take it back to something that you said quite early on, because it's a conversation I've been having with lots of businesses at the moment, and it's around you've got a product, you found product market fit, and then you've realised that you need to kind of do micro pivots and kind of re-find a new product market fit, and that is genuinely the conversation I've had with like 3 businesses over the last kind of 6-7 weeks, and it'd be really just interesting, like, where are you and how are you finding that whole situation really?
It's very difficult. As I alluded to before, we have to think very carefully about how we position the product. There's a lot of politics that goes on in construction, and the decisions we make may affect future decisions, and not decisions, but future opportunities, and that we may have in the future with other customers. So we have to kind of play a balancing act between being on the side of everyone. Yeah, it's a very difficult balance to maintain, as well as also making the features which people expect in an accelerating tech world. We've got AI now, just filling in the buzz terms for us. A lot of customers are talking about AI, and it's a very difficult thing to work through.
Great stuff, Paul. Well, welcome. Good luck. And Sandy, give us a bit of background to yourself and a challenge or so that you're facing.
Sure. Thank you. So I'm Sandeep Datta, working for Barclays, New York, as Assistant Vice President in the Portfolio Management IT department. And in my daily work schedule, we are kind of looking into all the IT process and the business reports, which go out every day on a monthly basis, daily or weekly reports. So that's the primary thing what I'm into. And lately we have started working on revamping the legacy systems and process what we had. My team is quite old, and there are so many. There was so much potential to upgrade the system in terms of technology, and even like there were some applications which were so legacy, they were so old that they didn't even have any automated deployment process. So we are currently working into that. Let's have everything streamlined in terms of process. Let's everything have upgraded in terms of process and cutting edge technology and all. So having said that, I felt a bit old in terms of my own knowledge of technology when we jumped into this. And this is the main challenge. What I'm facing over here is like I'm keeping myself up to date first with the latest technological improvements, what we are offering to the team and to the business to look after those enhancements, and then take them forward to include in the mainstream process. And the next level of challenge is that convincing the business to move out from that legacy process and legacy mindset to use the new stream of technologies what we are producing, keeping the business interests intact. And that's where we are able to convince. I think I would say we are 60-70% there, where we are able to upgrade most of the legacy process and reporting systems to use the new process, advanced ones. And we are in the process of converting the rest 25-30%, whatever is left, so that we will have in I think down the line couple of years, we are targeting to have complete automated and upgraded technological process to cater the business needs. Right. So that's my day-to-day work life. And apart from that, what I'm working is I'm trying to conceptualize an idea into a working product. And that is something, the gist of the idea is to forecast employment for both candidates and the recruiters or organizations. Like the reason why this idea came into my mind was in the events of recent layoffs, I was thinking like what was the main reason that the candidates joined all these organizations and organizations hired in such a number, and then like what was the need of hiring such a number when they had to let the employees go. Even at the same time, the candidates, what was the need of switching the jobs, and get themselves hired. So the core of this idea to have an AI model which will analyze a candidate's profile with respect to the skills, work experience, demographic dependencies, previous and current roles, then remuneration expectations, and versus the organization's employment, historical trends, current size, revenue, etc.
Sanjay, don't make the first question. You're mad to do a startup. That's not to be the first question here.
No, I just appreciate the share, right? Really appreciate the share. I tell you what I find interesting, and I take my hat off to you, is the transformation that you're doing in an enterprise, taking standard processes and systems that have been there forever and have worked forever, and the people have probably worked there forever, and you're bringing it into today's technologies and today's processes, and I think I can really appreciate that challenge, and I take my hat off to you for going through that, and I can understand that being quite painful and challenging. So thank you for the share.
Good stuff. All right, listen, everybody. We're going to move on to the big moment, the quiz. The quiz is coming up. I'm going to ask my friend from across the Atlantic to select a number, Sandy, 1 to 3, and that'll start us off.
2.
Number 2. Okay, well, good luck. Oh, I tell you what I've forgotten, actually, and I know the audience will be dying to find out. Your nominated local restaurants. Paul, where will this $50 be spent?
So I nominate Dishoom, which is a lovely restaurant, Indian restaurant in Manchester. The food is phenomenal, and every meal they make, they also donate the same amount of the meal to charity. So that's where I'd love to go.
I have actually been to Dishoom as well, so I actually know what you're talking about. That's great. And Sandeep, where will your $50 be going if you were to be the winner of this fine quiz?
Sure. Hopefully I am. I nominate an Italian family-owned restaurant called Mangiamo's, and they're pretty good in making Italian food like pasta and pizzas. And salads, yes.
And where are you, Sandeep? Where are you based?
I'm in New Jersey.
And that's local to you there, yeah?
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Now, you said number 2, didn't you? It's remarkable how everybody always chooses the same question. Who am I? Goes first, which is personally my favourite. So, good luck, guys. The rules are very simple. If you think you know the answer, first name out, please. If you do get it wrong, it goes to the other person. First person to get 2 wins the $50. Right, here we go. This chap was born Ohio, 1847, died New Jersey, 1931. American inventor, developed many devices in fields such as electric power generation, mass communication, sound recording, motion pictures. Led to the invention of the phonograph, and probably the most famous of his inventions, the electric light bulb.
Thomas Alva Edison.
Sandeep, you're one up. I could see the cogs in Paul's head working around there.
Tip of my tongue.
So well done. Paul, 1 or 3?
3, please.
3, cool. Okay. Can you name the CEO who appeared this week before a Senate panel recommending regulation of AI? The bigger clue is the CEO of OpenAI. No, we've got to do it. The listening audience don't want to hear the silence, so we're going to have an answer coming up. No, it's not there. Sam Altman.
It's the CEO of ChatGPT, right?
Of OpenAI.
Yeah, OpenAI.
Yeah, okay. It was interesting, though, wasn't it, that he went before the Senate panel recommending regulation. I think even he realises that this is slightly getting out of control. Okay, final question, Paul. This one to tie, to split the $50, or this one for Sandeep to confirm the victory. In 2007, 2 MIT students founded a file hosting service. 11 years later, went public.
Is that Dropbox?
Back of the net, as they used to say at Leicester. They don't say that anymore. But well done, Paul. Brilliant. And that means we have got a split, which is also, that's always the favourite popular result. So $25 going to each of you. Thank you both very much indeed for showing up and for volunteering. Appreciate it very much indeed.
Thank you for having us.
Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
So Sanjay, I always ask you, easy or difficult questions? Were you on top of those?
So I got two. I didn't get the name of the CEO. I'm rubbish with names.
Oh, Sam Altman. Sorry, the CEO.
Yeah. No, I'm rubbish with names, but I got the other two. Yeah.
I don't know. There's something in me that rather likes the draw. I know we like to see winners and losers in life, don't we? But it's nice to see a draw. Listen, I don't want to hold you up or the audience any more up. It's the fireside chat with Matthew. Look forward to it.
Thank you very much. Hi, Matthew. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time out. And I know it's very early where you are. So thanks for finding some time for us. We're just going to jump into it. We spoke a couple of weeks ago, and this kind of subject area is very scary for myself and fellow CTOs and fellow technical leaders out there. So I'm very excited. I'm hoping that you can give us some wise wisdom and make us a little bit less nervous as we will have to do this.
Sure.
So the subject area is kind of selling and influencing people. So really, the first obvious question is, so I'm a CTO and I'm expected to sell. I mean, who to and why? What's going on here, right? This was not on the brief.
Well, I mean, if you're a CTO, anything from a small startup CTO to, mid-range company where you're maybe the sole CTO to being part of a CTO office at a huge company like Oracle, or, basically, you need to influence your peers, inside the company. You need to influence other leaders in the company, your manager, other folks. If you want to get more resources, you've got a new technical idea or product idea, and you want to persuade them that, hey, you go this direction, you should fund my project, and I should get staff and build my empire. So there's both internal, and there's, I think the part that you're saying is a little more nerve-wracking is dealing, working with customers, talking to customers, presenting, so. I mean, let's face it, a lot of CTOs, technical people, are on the more introverted side, especially if they're developers. One thing that makes developers productive developer is somebody who probably could just sit there for 6 to 8 hours and just be alone and code or design or whatever. So, I mean, often we're not necessarily particularly social. It turns out I'm a little bit of an anomaly. I'm social, sort of both social and technical, so it comes a little more easily for me. And there's no question that some people, it just isn't, they're not as more comfortable being around people they've never met. It's something, your company is going to expect you to do it. To be honest, once you get used to it, it's actually a lot of fun. I mean, it's exciting. You see what happens. Can you actually move the needle? And of course, here's the thing. If you're a CTO, the sales force is going to love you because basically you're viewed as having deep technical knowledge, but you're also kind of C-level. You have that title. So within my own company, we use the title to help us get meetings with some of our largest customers. So the good news is you're sort of an ambassador for your company and product. And so you don't have to do the negotiating. Typically, you're not necessarily dealing with, some negative issues. Although sometimes I'll play that role too. Like customers, you become essentially their, the ambassador. So if something's going wrong, they want to yell at you, and that's fine. It's like, so it's all this sort of like selling ambassadorship, and all together. But as a CTO, you're a really valuable resource to the sales force. So it's important to, in my opinion, it's important to get to this. And there's also sort of a form of CTO, they're called field CTOs. And so what that means specifically is like, sometimes you hear the word outbound product management, right? So outbound product management is in charge of documentation, make sure that product marketing has the right technical information they need to get the product marketing right. Maybe dealing with relationships with OEMs and this kind of stuff. So it's equivalent of like an outbound CTO, is you're really focused on, you work directly with the sales force, you probably work with product marketing, and that's your role, but you're highly technical. You're still very technical. And so you're generally going to be way more technical than product marketing. And they're going to they'll often screw up the marketing because they just don't know enough about the product. So that's a long answer, but I hope that's helpful.
No, that's really good. So there's a couple of things in there that I really want to on and dive into. So I'm going to come back to CTO, the job title, and why that's important to a company. I'll come back to that in a second because I think that deserves some time and going into. But the first one, which I think we should cover, is, and you said it right at the beginning, so selling could be selling to a client or a customer, which I'm a little bit like you. I don't mind that bit because I like solving problems, and I see that selling as just solving a problem, right? So I think in my own head, I've pretended it's not selling, right? Just to kind of make myself feel a bit better. But the one that I've always got nervous with, and I've had like challenges, is the internal influence, right? So, and I think you said it, when I have to go and say, right, I need more resources, and this is why. And actually, sometimes it's quite significant, relative to your organization. And they're the two that typically come to my mind. But, I think what would be good to understand is what are the different types of selling that a CTO is probably going to experience. Are there more than those two? Are there other things? We've used the term influence. So again, it'd be good for you just to go into that a little bit and kind of share your knowledge there.
Well, the third big one, I think, obviously, is social media. So, CTOs, I think today, CTOs are, you're expected to, if you're the sole CTO of the company, you're expected to be on social media. You should be, Twitter and LinkedIn, certainly. Social media is, can be, sometimes Twitter in particular, you have to get into kind of a rhythm, and you got to figure out what your sort of Twitter persona is, and you want to connect that with your company. So Twitter, and it isn't necessarily, it's more, that's not necessarily directly selling a product, of course, although sometimes you are like posting on, hey, we just did a new product release, or we just introduced this new product, and you want to blog, you'll be expected to blog about it. You'll be expected to tweet about it. And it's very powerful, actually. Twitter is very powerful because, unlike LinkedIn, it's not a closed network. Somebody can retweet you, and then all of a sudden, if that person has 1 million followers and you have 500, guess what? Your traffic is going to just go up exponentially. You'll probably double your follower count. So you can very quickly get a heck of a lot of free attention to your product and company. So you can also, blow yourself up. So Twitter is if you kind of overstep some bound, you can get a lot of negative blowback too. But the truth is, you've got attention on your product. You're influencing people towards your direction. So I think social media is probably the next big one, which is, again, influencing via blog posts, Twitter posting, and that sort of thing.
I'm going to quickly touch on that one because I never thought about that. And when I reflect, the PayPal CTO and the HubSpot CTO do it really well. And they do a mix of everything that you've actually just said, right? So they do a little bit of product promotion. They do a lot about their company and their brand, but then also about the ethos of their organization and the social side of their organization. And I guess they're doing that to attract talent, right? So these are CTOs in big, huge enterprises. And I guess part of that is just to attract talent. I didn't even think of that. So that's a really interesting one. Thank you.
Yeah. And I mean, by the way, this all works together. So one thing that I do is, I help the Salesforce. I'm an ambassador to, our customers. We're big, I don't have to go into detail about the company, but we're a big established company with like huge, basically large customers that have large deals with us. And so I'm kind of an ambassador, but sometimes it's just a cold reach out, like literally cold sell it, like you're approaching somebody that has never purchased your product, maybe doesn't even know about your company, but I'll reach out to, but blogging and even Twitter threads, which are sort of a form of blogging, which I think is even which is also very powerful. Bottom line is, if you can point people, you can kind of stay in conversation with people. Hey, I just did a blog post on this new feature in our product, and it's very cool and it's relevant. And most importantly, it's relevant to them. So everything starts from, as you remember, the first rule of all this communication, social media, blogging, et cetera. It's like, what's your audience? What do they care about? So yeah, you say, hey, this is this new feature, but the more important thing is like why they should care. So I don't know, that's kind of the three buckets in my mind: internal, external, and social media, and particularly the external stuff, social media. The other thing is relationships. Sometimes CTOs are expected to work with partners. So bigger companies, IBM, Microsoft, Oracle, have partner organizations. So what they do, it kind of increases the reach of your distribution. And so you want to have good relationships with those partners because they're often very good at selling your product. They have their own pool of customers. So you're also expected to be an ambassador to what they call the channel. It's often what the word is.
Definitely. And I think from an SME standpoint, which is kind of my world, it's the flip, right? So I've got those types of people talking to me, and I've got to, spend time with the big software houses that we buy from, which are big on our P&L. And it's tough. I know I'm not selling, but I'm trying to convince them to add features that my organization wants. So it's ultimately still selling. Interesting.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. And it's very important because it's a force multiplier. Like we work with one of the largest, management consulting guys that do actual real software development. Then the more we can get them to think about our platform and leverage it, it's a 10x kind of effect if you can really, versus talking, or 100x versus talking to a single large customer.
Okay, so now I'm going to go into the scary subject of of selling to customers and clients. So this is the one that everyone gets very nervous about, and I'm fortunate enough to speak to lots of CTOs around the world, and I know this is the one that gives most people anxiety. So I guess to give the intro. As a CTO, there is an expectation that we are going to have to sell. Whether we're in startup mode, scale-up mode, or enterprise, there is a level of selling. And I think right at the top of our conversation, you explained this really well. The job title lends itself to lots of interpretation to the outside world. Therefore, as an organization, tech leader, whatever the job title is.
Yes.
So if we go down the route that you're going to have to sell customers or clients, so you're not going to be able to avoid it, or it would be very career limiting. Can you give some advice on what I should expect as I go into let's call it a sales meeting, but it won't be dressed up like that. But what should I expect in that meeting? What will be expected of me? And I guess the third question is, can you give some tools or advice how to prepare for such a session?
Sure. All right. So the first one is, I guess, what's your role? So in a particular meeting. Is that right? Yeah. So, I mean, it depends. Of course, it depends on what the purpose of, the meeting is. So like typical standard meeting is going to be, where if you're the CTO, you're going to be brought in when there's some, if it's an existing customer where you have some engagement, but you want to get more, you want them to buy more of the product or, more features or just, extend the relationship, then typically you're going to be expected to present on the technical side. And so what's expected of you is, of course, you're going to study the customer. You're going to try to figure out the people you're talking to in particular, go to their LinkedIn bios. LinkedIn is very useful that way because it'll give you a lot of information. It'll tell you what they think their skill sets are. It gives you a sense of a characterization of who you're talking to. And so you figure out who your audience is, because again, your message is always tailored to the audience as much as possible. And then what I often do, what I'm kind of have been pretty good at is to figure out, okay, here's the audience. We're trying to get deeper relationship with them, trying to get them to buy, get more engaged with our product, buy more, etc. I'll try to figure out if they have a blog, that's great. Just figure out what's in their head. What are they thinking about? For example, there was a CTO of a company, and he's essentially CTO and senior vice president of engineering, about $1 billion company. And he was actually a very talented, he has a deep background in my own company's sort of area of technology. And he also wrote a book. And the book was actually a very good book on, standards around this technology area. So it turns out we, at Oracle had a new product feature that's very, very cool. I connected that cool product feature with what he was talking about, kind of his background. And we were having trouble connecting with this guy, and we were able to get the meeting. And then the meeting, I brought in product management. So another thing you're often expected to do is you have to decide as a CTO, do you understand the product deeply enough that you can present to a pretty smart audience? Since our product is decades old, it's very complex. It's a big, complex architecture. It's probably one of the most complicated technology products out there, like 1,000 different features. So there are things where I'll pull in product management, and especially if it's new. If it's something new, then you don't, I don't quite know much about it. So that's your second thing, is you got to decide, what are you going to present? Are you going to be the one presenting? And then you're in charge typically of just coordinating, getting things, because you're that ambassador, people are just more likely to respond to you. So bottom line is you set the meeting up, you kind of coordinate things, you kind of have to act as a coordinator. And then the meeting starts. You're essentially, what I do is I'm kind of, if there's product management there, I'll be the maitre d', or, whatever you call that, the MC. So I'll just kind of introduce everybody. So you introduce yourselves, you let the customer introduce themselves. Sometimes it's a really large crowd. So what I'll do is I'll pretty much introduce everybody. And then I won't, if it's like more than about a half dozen, I'll just assume that on our side, we all know who the customers are. So you can sort of speed that up. So bottom line, you MC, you're going to introduce everyone. You're going to introduce the topic, set the context, and then either you'll present yourself or, you'll have somebody in product management help you. And I mean, my input to budding CTOs is try to be as, let the customer speak. So even though you're presenting and they want to hear what you said, like, for example, this very technical customer that had written the book, it was it's one of the best meetings I've had in a couple of years. And it was just a constant feedback between product management and him. He knew the area very deeply. So there was a tremendous amount of back and forth. I took tremendous number of notes. So that's kind of during the meeting. If you're not giving the presentation, it's a lot easier to take notes. And I really strongly encourage people to take notes. Typically in the United States, you can't record without people's permission. Sometimes I'll do that, but you need to ask people's permission to record a meeting. And then you can later sort of get notes off the recording. But typically I like to take notes during the actual call. All right. So then you get towards the end of the call. If it's been a good interaction, positive, then you kind of typically the sales force wants like a next steps. What are you going to do next? Is there going to be another meeting? Are they going to introduce you to somebody? So, for example, this meeting I've been talking about, they have a chief architect, and so we're going to, meet with their chief architect and dive even deeper into the product. So, the bottom line is, you have to sort of figure out what the follow up is, and then your job is to sort of follow up afterwards.
Thanks for that, Matthew. So just to kind of cover off the last bit of this question is really just what are some of the tools / advice? So just trying to condense that all down. What are the tools that I need to take in when I'm, being asked to go into a sales meeting?
Do you mean tools like technical tools, or do you mean actual like just the principles or like concepts? When you say tools, is it like the actual?
Yeah. So the principles really. Yeah. So one of the ones that you kind of mentioned that I find myself naturally doing is kind of going onto LinkedIn and obtaining and collecting context, right? Because I think that gives you power. It gets rid of some of the nerves. So yeah, tools like that. If there's any, those kind of bits of advice that you can kind of give, that would be really useful, I think.
Yeah. So again, kind of working backwards from your audience. So figuring out who your audience is, as you mentioned, Sanjay, LinkedIn is very good for that. You can also just do Google searches. Are they blogging? Have they been interviewed? So another tool is just Google searching on their, have they done interviews? That's often very helpful. For example, I got a very large company, like a $65 billion company. Their CTO, obviously, this is a very important senior person. So he had several interviews, and I was able to kind of get a sense of what he was doing. And it turns out I figured out a way our product would be relevant to them, because they had a particular program they were working, and I figured out how our product would be relevant. So in that case, the Google searching itself was really useful. Sometimes people have Twitter feeds. If they have Twitter feeds, it's going to be pretty personal. You'll get a much better sense of them. LinkedIn is a little bit more, here's my resume, my kind of, and there is some kind of sense of a feed in LinkedIn, but Twitter's more, I would say, more personal. It's just, to be honest, Twitter is, I'd say maybe 1 in 10 people of the customers you'll talk to will have a Twitter feed, but it's still something to look at. There are some, internally, we use a couple different commercial tools to, you can get some back, like, I forget what they're called, but bottom line is there's some tools that let you dig in a little bit deeper. And I think they're associated with LinkedIn, but to be honest, mostly the public sources are. And then of course, if you were talking tools, my biggest tool is, sort of this, there's a whole, one thing, probably the biggest takeaway for your audience that I would push is you really need to study persuasion. There is a lot of social science behind it. It's basically pretty well established. It's not the standard ways that you sell, standard principles you use are pretty widely accepted, and you'll recognize them all because they're being used on you constantly all day long. But that's having that, like in your, we're working on my sailboat here, getting it ready for the season in Minnesota. We were just loading up like one bag of, one pail of tools, another bag of tools, another box of tools. So it's really that kind of mindset. I got to have these sort of persuasion tools there and ready. And I think that's where maybe your audience is like a little unsure. I think it's getting to your point about it can be a little uncomfortable. How do I convince people? How do I persuade? So what I would tell them, hey, you can study this. I have my own sort of specific sources that I've used and found pretty productive. But, you can practice. And, the truth is people generally like CTOs. I mean, you're not viewed as the hard sell. You're not the bad guy. You're viewed as like an honest broker. Oh, he's a technical nerd. It's like in Dilbert, right? I don't know. In Dilbert, it's like there's some, the sales engineer comes in. You're kind of like the sales engineer, a high-level sales engineer. You come in with a salesman, and the salesman's talking to the customer and kind of telling them, stuff that's not really quite accurate. And so the customer looks at the sales engineer or a CTO and just starts asking him questions. Of course, he tells the truth, or she tells the truth, because that's what technical people do. So you're viewed as more of an honest, broker, as it were.
Do you know what? I find that really interesting, and and I've been in those situations where you get looked at for the real answer, and I think I think for me, the kind of tools that I take in, I really like that research piece, but it's the way I do it is a lot of preparation. So knowing who I'm speaking to.
Yeah.
Often I was always trying to solve a problem, so I'd try to really get into why do they want to talk to me? Why am I actually being brought in? And I found that I spent a lot of time asking my sales colleagues of, why are you actually dragging me into this meeting? Do I really need to get on a train for 2 hours? And can I not just sit in the office and be productive? So trying to get that out of your colleagues I found really good. Lots of preparation. I've got a habit that's been drilled into me of just creating some slides. I don't necessarily always present them, but I find that the slides give me clarity of thought. So at least when I go into the meeting, I've already got some clarity of thought. And then I think you've said it, right? Just engaging with your counterparts, listening to their questions and being really honest with the answers. And I think that honesty really comes through. And so far that's really helped me when I've been in those situations.
No, absolutely. Like when you're and especially if you basically say, hey, there's a flaw in our product, or there's an issue, that actually builds credibility, because then people assume that, if you're willing to, and it builds rapport. And frankly, it's just, I've always pushed, and most of my sales folks are relationship oriented. Some of them are just deal oriented. They want to get a deal done and then move on. And so, now you don't necessarily, as you get closer to closing a deal, you want to be careful you have to be quite careful. Let me come back to that, but I just want to agree with you on slides. So of course, PowerPoint is what people use. Sometimes whiteboarding, if you're comfortable, I don't mind. I like whiteboarding as well. It depends on the nature of the meeting. And then just a good point about tools. So typically product management or product, there'll be a product management site that will have like the deep technical stuff on your product, right? Or if there's a new feature, they'll have a bunch of background. And then either product management and engineering. In my company, development does a lot of its own marketing and developing its communication tools and that sort of thing, because product marketing is just it's not big enough and it's not technical enough. But in other companies, but still, product marketing will also take that and create sort of sales tools. So there's this collection of like technical documentation and PowerPoints that are technical. And then there's product marketing spin, which is typically a little more salesy, a little more like, what's the competition doing, that sort of stuff. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I'd forgotten to bring up, always check out what is product management doing for me? What is product marketing doing for me? And then typically, I mean, our product marketing even had a way you could have multiple slide decks, and you could rearrange the slides and pull them and create your own slide deck right on the fly. So that's, so again, the workflow is, as we've said, use these LinkedIn, these other sources, figure out what your customer's thinking, talk to the salespeople, look at maybe there's bug reports, you build a picture, then you figure out your job as CTO is to map the message to the audience. And then the last part is putting together that message. So typically it's slides, and I'm kind of lazy, so I don't like to, if I don't have to make slides, if I can reuse slides, I always try to reuse slides, but sometimes you can't. You need it's like a unique message. So, if you're in a startup, it's a little different. Of course, you may be doing product management and marketing yourself, but it's usually the product set is a lot simpler, and so it may be that in that case you're probably doing all three of them yourself, and so that's a pretty high expectation. But as a CTO, that they're going to expect you to be able to take a technical thing and communicate it to an audience based on kind of where they sit in the spectrum, all the way from like a C level, but maybe not super familiar with their technology, down to like, engineer level. I don't know, at least in my experience, if you've reached that level, you should be able to cover that spectrum. I mean, I'm not sure what you think, Sanjay, but
yeah, no. Do you know what? Earlier in my career, I used to get really nervous about this, and what I realized was, they just wanted to know. So if I was selling something, they were just like, show me it working, right? So no product slides, no PowerPoint. Pull the phone out of my pocket. I've got an app or something on that phone, and I just walk up, sit next to them, run through the product, and so something that I've been working on for the last handful of months, and actually that wasn't scary at all, because it was my life for the last 3 or 4 months, and I was just explaining that to somebody that I was sitting next to, and I think very early on in my career, I used that technique to kind of remove the fears. And then, like you said, you'll walk into other situations where you might have someone from a slightly larger organization, so maybe from the C-suite, who's a little bit more disconnected, and I guess it's just trying to understand what they really want to know, right? So they don't want to know the detail; they just want to know, solve my problem. And the best advice I ever got from a non-exec director was understand the customer's problem and just solve it. And it's as easy as that, really.
100%. So I think I just want to build on so demos are always preferred. So if you can give some kind of you can show the product, and then to your point, keep it simple and especially non-technical. You have to be very careful. You have to follow sometimes they want more and give them more, but sometimes like product management will be burying them.
Yeah.
With way too much detail. It's like you said, what's the essence of the message?
Yeah, 100%.
And how is it self-relevant? Why should they care? You should always be asking yourself, why does this customer care to listen to me?
So, Matthew, we've dived into lots of things, so thank you for that. I have one final question that I like to ask our guests. And so this is really, again, let me set this up, is we've talked about selling, but really it's about influence and persuasion. We're not selling anything. Yeah. We're trying to influence, we're trying to persuade someone. And really as a technical leader, as a CTO, that's probably what I need to understand more of. So can you give one bit of advice to the people listening of where do I start my journey on the art of persuasion, on influence? So where do I start my journey? What's my kickoff point? And then hopefully we've given everyone something to chew on and as they go on their own kind of journeys.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I actually was prepared for that question. So I would buy this book. It's a book by a guy named Dale Carnegie. It's an old book. It's written in I think the 30s, but it's basically timeless. And it's called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I think it's sort of considered the kind of classic Bible for that. And I literally, if you saw the book, it's basically my version has got it's all fridge. I look at it almost every single day because again, it sort of keeps bringing home that point. It's not about you. It's about what that other person is thinking, what's their, what their, their own vision, what's their drives, what's driving them, what do they care about? And it helps you engineer your interaction with that person in a way that helps you understand them, and then, to your point, persuade and influence. And in a way that's it's a sincere, from the heart, if you will, morally proper way of interacting with people. But it's very it's extremely helpful, and my own persona is a little bit different than the book, than what the book really directs you to do, and that's why I have to keep reminding myself these are the rules. The other one I'd read is there's a book called Persuasion, so Pre-Suasion. It's by a guy named Robert Cialdini, and I believe the CTO Academy. You guys are followers, or he's a well-known expert on persuasion. So that book is sort of his latest book, and it follows on from another one called Influence, which is like the Bible on influence. And what that shows, I would also read that book because it covers a lot of the topics from influence. And just for a short, what you'll learn in that book is there's six principles, 6 techniques that are used to sell, and they're pretty much used universally. And those principles are just quickly social proof. So what are other people thinking and doing? People tend to follow others. Liking, you tend to buy things from people you like. If people like you more, they're more likely to buy. There's authority. So if you're viewed as an expert, it turns out I have a PhD. I used to teach at university, and I did a couple of startups. So when people look at my background, it looks like I know what I'm talking about. Not always, but mostly it looks like mostly I do. Authority, reciprocity. So if I give you something, it's sort of, you'll feel a little bit of a debt, and that you will feel like you need to give me something back. Commitment and consistency. When people make a small commitment, they said, I'm going to do something. One good thing about human nature is we typically want to be consistent with whatever thing we've committed to. So if you get somebody to make a small commitment, even just like start with a meeting, then you can make a bigger commitment. Hey, let us talk to your chief architect. And then a bigger commitment, proof of concept, bigger commitment, like let buy the product. And then finally, the last one is scarcity. So, this nonsense where people are, limited time offer, or, only 3 left. You go to the hotel website and it's only 2 rooms left. So it's like some, scarcity is going to make you more likely to buy. So there are 6 principles. And frankly, those 2 books, they're easy to read. They're kind of, Persuasion is a fun read. Cialdini is a really good author. There's even better stuff in there about how do you get people's attention. It's about managing people's attention. Because here's the bottom line. So this is the last thought I'll leave the audience with. Scott Adams basically asked the question, hey, what's the most important principle of persuasion? What's the most important thing that you have to do right? And people started tweeting back. And then the first person, it was a one-word reply, said attention. And then, Scott Adams replied with 100% or a bullseye. So the bottom line is, if you don't have people's attention, if you don't have people's attention, it doesn't matter. So you have to get them to be engaged with you. And then, I could keep going, but basically that's the important thing. And there's even in that horrible sales, the worst sales manager that ever has appeared in movies is a character, Alec Baldwin's character in the movie called Glengarry Glen Ross. So sales is not like this movie. It's about a boiler room, kind of a scammy sales operation. But he was right. He said the first thing you have to do with a customer, get their attention. So that's what I leave you with.
Love it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Matthew, for that conversation. It's really useful. I hope people listening are feeling less nervous and scared around this topic. I know I've picked up some tips. So really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Well, that was really interesting. That's the first time I've watched it, just was watching it then. And the whole issue of persuasion is fascinating, but I love that what he was saying about you're in an advantageous position on the basis of the knowledge you have.
Exactly. And really you're coming from, as a CTO, as a technical person, you're coming from a position of power. And that power gives you trust with the other person straight away. And I think that perceived really differently, to your kind of a sales engineer versus yourself. So I think, people shouldn't be worried and they should go in with that confidence and just talk about what you know, right? That's why you're there. So talk about what you know. So yeah, I think, people definitely don't need to be worried when they go into situations like that.
Yeah, and that whole issue about experts and non-experts is an interesting one. It's probably for another interview, but the whole ChatGPT era is making me actually feel that expertise is going to matter.
Yes. Yeah.
Even more than it ever did before.
I agree.
Because it's been so difficult to work it out. Listen, wonderful. Now, as I mentioned at the opening of this edition, I was in Sao Paulo very recently. I met Juliana, who's one of our MBA students, and she very kindly agreed to come along and do the Around the Tech World in 80 Seconds. So here is a quick look at the Sao Paulo tech scene. So those Brazilian rhythms that you've heard and those images that you've seen relate to Sao Paulo, and there's two reasons why we've given you this introduction. One is that I was there. I was in Sao Paulo in April, very excited. I never have a dull trip to Brazil. I've been very lucky to go 3 or 4 times. But I was in Sao Paulo to meet a number of our MBA students and just to get a sense of the local tech scene. And I managed to not only have the pleasure of sitting next to Juliana, but also convincing her to join us for this Around the Tech World in 80 Seconds. Thank you for joining us, Juliana. I know you're super busy, but welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
It's great to see you. Now, before we do the 80 seconds and producer James is ready, he's got his stopwatch in his hand. You went to Web Summit. We're planning to go to Web Summit in Lisbon, actually, CTO Academy, which is in November. But they had the first one in Rio, I think, didn't they, in April? Did you? And you were there. What was your overall impression of it?
Yes, it was the first time here in Brazil, and it was actually excellent for networking opportunities and to meet people. For me, it was the best takeaway I can say. It was for networking.
And exhausting as well, I think, isn't it?
Yes, totally. Full of events, and yes.
I know. I find that
it was worth it.
Yeah, I find the Lisbon one it's brilliant, and Lisbon's fantastic to visit, but it is so exhausting. You really are. You need a holiday after you get out of it. But listen, thank you again for joining us. We are now going to have Around the Tech World in 80 Seconds with a focus on Sao Paulo. And producer James, I think, is going to set our stop clock off. So Juliana, are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Cool. Let's do it. Juliana, tell us your name, role, and the company that you work for.
Juliana, I am a Senior Director of Engineering at Stone. Stone actually enables merchants to accept different forms of electronic payments, such as credit, debit cards. We also provide a complete infrastructure, including POS devices and software integrations to securely process those transactions.
Awesome. What's so great about the Sao Paulo tech scene?
Well, it's great because it offers this compelling combination of a huge market potential, highly talented people, and an extensive startup ecosystem.
I can back up how dynamic the place is as well, having been there. Some emerging players. I know the Googles and the Amazons are there, but who are the emerging players, would you say?
There are very huge Latin American companies here, like Mercado Libre, Nubank, a lot of fintechs like Creditas, and that's it.
Juliana, we're running short on time. Why would anybody move or invest in Sao Paulo?
Well, we often refer São Paulo as the city of opportunity. So whatever your goals may be, probably this super dynamic environment can provide you a way to get closer to your goals.
We're going to go over but 5 words that describe Sao Paulo.
Vibrant, diverse, innovative, cultural, and people.
Yes, we did it. Juliana, thank you so much. I'm going to try a bit of Portuguese now. Muito obrigado e adios.
Oh, muito obrigada.
Wow, thank you, Juliana. Wonderful supporter of CTO Academy. Can I tell you, I've been to Brazil a few times. Very lucky to have been to Brazil a few times. I've never had a bad night out in Brazil.
I've never been, and it kind of makes me want to go now. So yeah, definitely.
Oh man, there is definitely something in the DNA, the Brazilian DNA, that's about just enjoying your life and living in the moment.
Yeah.
We had a wonderful time in Sao Paulo, so thank you for that, Sanjay. We've done it. We've completed another fine episode. Any final thoughts to leave the audience?
I think, 2 things. Make time for yourself, as the Brazilians have shown us, and prep and don't worry. So even if it's sales or your football team sucks, don't worry about it. You know what you're doing and just crack on.
Live in the present. On that happy note, thank you all very much for listening, and we'll see you in episode 5. That was a CTO Academy production with special thanks to Sanjay Mistry, Paul Clegg, Sandeep Dutta, Matthew O'Keefe, Juliana Shahood, and of course you, our audience. Obrigado e adios.